Hey guys, Charles here. We are doing AP Macro 2024 free response question, and this is set 1. So remember, you got 2 sets every year, mostly every year, but this is 2004 set 1. This is macro. All right, let's get into it. So number 1, the economy of alpha is in short-run equilibrium with a cyclical unemployment rate of 3%. Anytime we're talking cyclical, we know we have a recession. So we have a recession, and cyclical unemployment is 3%. Frictional unemployment is 4%. Actual unemployment is 8%. We should have this formula in our head that frictional plus structural plus cyclical is our unemployment rate. So we know our unemployment rate's 8%. We know our cyclical is 3%. We know these two together also is what gives us our natural rate of unemployment, also called full employment. If we are at our natural rate, we are fully employed. That implies that we always still, I know it says fully employed, but it means that we only have frictional and structural. Again, you just have to know that. Frictional here is 4%. Structural, therefore, is going to be 1%. Cyclical's 3. Our unemployment rate is 8%. Easy enough. Calculate the natural rate of unemployment. We know our natural rate is frictional and structural. It's got to be 5% there. Easy enough, right? All right, let's move to B. Draw a correctly labeled graph of the aggregate demand, short-run aggregate supply, long-run aggregate supply curve. So you should just be able to pop this graph right off the top of your head anytime we're talking aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Long-run aggregate supply is your vertical curve, straight up and down. Your short-run aggregate supply here is going to be upward sloping, always upward sloping unless they tell you something different. And then aggregate demand is obviously downward sloping. Now, I'm showing you this graph at full employment. This would be price level right there. This is real GDP down here. Can be output, but College Board always uses real GDP, so you and I should use real GDP, right? This is YF. Full employment is always under your long-run aggregate supply curve. Again, this is our natural rate of unemployment. That output right there would be us fully employed. But we know that we have, at our current equilibrium output, we have a recession. So aggregate demand has shifted to the left. This is our recession right here. Anytime aggregate demand is to the left of full employment here, we know that we are in a recession. So this is our current equilibrium right here. This was our old equilibrium if we were at full employment. Now we're in a recession. This is our current equilibrium. We're going to call it PL1 here. We're going to draw a line straight down. This is Y1. Yeah, I think we're good. I'm going to get rid of this original aggregate demand curve that I drew. I tend not to do that anymore, is draw that. It just is kind of confusing. I know where full employment is. You should know where full employment is, and you should know how to draw a recession. You just need to bang in that aggregate demand, and you're all done for showing a recession. If we were showing an inflationary gap, we would have drawn aggregate demand here on the right side, or that current equilibrium would be at the right side. That would have been an inflationary gap. This is a recession. Again, just know how to draw them off the top of your head because it's always going to be either full employment or recession or inflationary gap. Well, not all the time, but good 90% of the time. So you should just be able to bang those out at the top. Just understand what's going on. So I'm going to get rid of that. We really don't need that. It just makes it a little, I'm going to leave the dots. All right, I think we're good for B here. Easy enough. Good. Labeled. Yeah, we're all good. Number C. Let's see here. Assume that policymakers take no policy action to close the gap. Then we're going to explain and we're going to show. Those are the two ways. This is almost always asked a lot, so you have to know it. This is a classical view. This is the understanding that if there's no fiscal, no monetary policy, what happens? In essence, the economy, what we could call self-adjusts. There's a lot of ways they could ask this, mostly on multiple choice questions, but we do see it on FRQs. If the economy self-adjusts, that is the classical view, we could say that there's flexible or immediately changing prices and wages. These are all things that lets us know, words, phrases that let us know that we're talking about a classical view. All right. So we know what's going to happen here. Since it's classical, there's no policymakers making any, there's no monetary, there's no fiscal policy. So we know that people are out of work. It's a recession. And the question to you would be, would people take lower wages to go back to work? Yes, they will. They're not going to sit at home and be hungry. They're going to take lower wages to go back to work. They're also, we know in a recession, that what we call input prices, which are all your material, your resources that businesses use to build whatever they're making, those input prices are going down. These are both sort of shifters of your short-run aggregate supply curve. So wages go down, input prices go down in a recession, your short run is going to shift to the right, and the economy self-adjusts back to full employment. You see us right under that long-run aggregate supply curve. That is the economy adjusting back to full employment. Let's say that explanation again. Now, you wouldn't do this for an explanation, but you'd want to be able to write it out. But I would say, due to there being no fiscal or monetary policy actions, wages during a recession, people will accept lower wages to go back to work, being that they're out of work. Input prices are going to fall. These are rightward shifters of your short-run aggregate supply curve. It would shift to the right. That's our showing right there. We draw it in. We also need to show that we're back at full employment, and that's what I would want to say. We go back to full employment at a lower price level. This tends to not change ever. It is again and again and again. This is the same question over and over and over again. Once you know how to answer it, wages go down, input prices go down, short run shifts to the right. We go back to full employment at a lower price level. You are golden for being able to answer these classical view questions. You could probably put your hands from past probably about 10 of these. And you could literally do once you know how to answer this, it's the same thing. You could do all 10 of those ever asked probably in 45 minutes once you get banging or less. All right, let's keep moving here. D, assume instead that Alpha's central bank, anytime we say central bank, we're talking about the Federal Reserve or we're talking about monetary policy. To close a recessionary output gap, the central bank wants to close this recession. Instead of there being no monetary policy and the economy fixing itself, now we've flipped to that the Fed wants to fix this recession. Easy enough. The banking system in Alpha has ample reserves. Now, that's pretty important. They're either going to have ample, or in this case, we're going to have ample reserves. Identify a specific monetary policy action that the central bank of Alpha would take to close the output gap. So, okay. I tend to always run with, now this is almost brand new. Last year was the first year that this actually, 2003 was the first year we had ample reserves. There's two things that I'm going to run toward. One is the administered interest rate. I'm just going to call this the AIR. The second thing, it would be what I call, or what the Fed calls, the interest on reserve balances. Let's call that the IORB. Now, technically, the discount rate could find its way in here also. I've seen teachers teach the discount rate or one of those things. I've never seen the College Board use that yet. And again, we have to be a little flexible here. They might change. But this seems to be their big go-to right here. Administered interest rate. If you look at the past questions or the questions they've given, multiple choice wise, the answer is always going to be AIR, IORB. I can't say that I've ever seen the discount rate, even though technically it is one of those things that the Fed could use to lower interest rates. And it is used. in the real world. But this would be my go-to thing if I only had to put my hand on one. This would be what I do. AIR needs to go down. The AIR needs to fall. And let's just sort of bang through this a second, understanding what we sort of need to know with ample reserves. The AIR is an interest rate, just like, well, it's really the IORB and everything else. But let's just say it's an interest rate, it goes down. The IORB is an interest rate, it goes down. These two, in essence, manipulate what we call the policy rate. The policy rate technically is what we also know as your federal funds rate. So the way I like to put this into my head is if the AIR goes down or the interest on reserve balance goes down, the policy rate goes down, which drives down the federal funds rate. If any of these happen, that's going to drive down nominal interest rates. Now, nominal interest rates goes back to what's going on with the economy. Once I know nominal interest rates are going down, in essence, if any of these go down, this happens. Now we're going to start thinking about investment. If interest rates are low, there's going to be more investment. More investment means more aggregate demand. More aggregate demand means a higher price level, which means if aggregate demand increases, real GDP goes up. If real GDP goes up, output goes up. And if output goes up, unemployment is going to go down. In essence, this is a way to get the economy by using monetary policy with an ample reserve. This is the way to get unemployment to go down. So, and to increase output. Look here, they're more specifically talking about the output gap here. We know real GDP and output are both going to go up because they're the same thing. So this is what I would have just simply said, identify a specific monetary policy. That was a lot of talking just to get to that point. But it's important that we have this in our brain. We understand these cause and effect relationships. Because once you know them, well, then you've got the puzzle and it's easy to figure out what they're asking you here. All right, AIR goes down. Identify, that's all we're doing. We're not really explaining. But we would, if we had to explain, let's just go into it just for a second. Again, the Fed would lower the administered interest rate or the IORB. Either one of these go down, they're going to lower the policy rate. And we're going to draw that graph right now. In essence, it looks like this. This is our reserves graph. Let's just read it. Draw a correctly labeled graph of the reserve market and show the effect of the action taken by the central bank on the policy rate. Now, policy rate's on your vertical. And quantity of reserves, excuse my handwriting, it's always been bad. Supply of reserves would be right here. We're going to draw this sort of Z, stretched out Z here. And remember, to be in the what we call the ample reserve section, that is that flat section of your reserve graph. This is the discount rate. This is the policy rate. As they drive down the AIR, it's going to drive down the policy rate. We're going to slide down this, and we're going to just bang it out just like that. This is our discount rate. We're going to show arrows going down, and then we're going to go tick, 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 tick across here, and we're going to show that policy rate going down. Policy rate 1, policy rate 2. Let's just say quantity of reserves on the bottom. Never leave anything. Always label everything here on these graphs so you get all the points for them. They're giving you points just for labeling the graph. So we identified our graph. This is reserve graph. I don't think you need a label. They'll know what they're looking at once you draw it in there. Cool. I think we're done. Again, if I had to explain that, I would walk through that whole scenario. Lots of times they're asking about what happens to real GDP or output or maybe unemployment. The Fed lowers the AIR if it's ample reserves. The policy rate falls, federal funds rate falls, nominal interest rate falls, and now we're off to the races. Investment goes up, which drives aggregate demand up, which drives the price level up, which drives real GDP and output up, which drives unemployment down. That is expansionary monetary policy if we're talking ample reserves. Whew, that was a lot of words. All right, you're doing great. Lots of stuff here, always for the first macro. They kind of bang a little bit of everything. Based on the change in the policy rate, what would happen to each of the following in the short run? Price of previously issued bonds. Well, you and I know that the AIR goes down. We also know that that's going to drive down the nominal interest rates. What we know is anytime interest rates are going down, we know that bond prices are going up. Now, there's a whole explanation about that they've never asked us. So you really just need to have in your brain fairly tightly that when interest rates fall, bond prices do the opposite. And remember, look at here that they are saying previously issued bond prices. So we're not going to go too much into deep that, but that is previously old bonds, their prices are going to go up. Yeah. All right. Let's don't go into that because it can take quite a while to explain that, and I don't think we need to do that. Price level. We've already answered this, right? Change in the policy rate. We already know anytime our AIR goes down, it drives down the policy rate. Anytime the policy is the federal funds rate, it goes down, it drives down nominal interest rates. Investment goes up, aggregate demand goes up, and now the price level goes up. So to explain that, we really need all of this. I would start and say when the AAR goes down, I don't really need that, but I like it. It's going to drive down the policy rate. When the policy rate falls, that is also going to drive down nominal interest rates. When nominal interest rates now go down, this is what drives up investment. Anytime investment goes up, I know that's going to make aggregate demand go up, and aggregate demand drives up the price level. So this cause and effect understanding is incredibly important because it is our explanation. Now, we wouldn't do it like this on the test. We'd write it out, but it's the same deep understanding in a really tight way, right? Price level. To explain what happens to the price level, you need to talk about aggregate demand. To know what causes aggregate demand to change, you need to give a determinant of aggregate demand, which is investment. What caused investment to go up? It was those lowering of interest rates. As interest rates are cheaper, people want to take out more loans. Therefore, they're going to invest more. And the reason why interest rates went down was because the policy rate and the AIR went right. So this is your cause and effect chain of sort of thinking that you should have tight in your head, to be able to explain this stuff. All right, guys, that was good stuff. 2024 set one, number one, macroeconomics, all done. Good job. Be safe. See you again. Bye.